Good evening. My name is Mario, and I'm the head of investor relations of Port of Tallinn. I'm glad to see that so many of you have come here today, and this is our third Investors' Day. So our agenda is very simple. So first of all, we have our CFO Andrus Ait, who will introduce the situation of Port of Tallinn today, all our activities and figures. Valdo Kalm, who is the Chairman of the Management Board, will discuss the future of Port of Tallinn and what are the projects underway currently. And then we'll get more information about our wind farms projects, as we have great hopes for this project. So this is for shipping and for the ports perspective. So I hope you will enjoy this event. You can ask questions at the end of each presentations and also afterwards during snacks. Good afternoon, dear investors. It is very good to see you all here today. The subtitle for the Investors' Day today is In the Winds of Future. I have the honor to introduce this with my own introduction so I can discuss the business opportunities for the future and some of the projects. My name is Andrus Ait. I started in February this year and I'm CFO, Chief Financial Officer. In a way of introduction, if I were to say that the Port of Tallinn this spring celebrated their 30th anniversary, then during 30 years, this company has gone from land to sea. We have our own fleet. And in the shore activities, wind is not always a good thing to have because that means that we might have problems docking and the vessels might be problems for shore-based installations and might cause damage. But now within 30 years, we've managed to get so far that wind is now working for us. But taking things one at a time. First of all, we have the introduction. So where we are today and regarding our volumes as well. This is where our revenue comes from the investors. Mario already introduced the agenda. We have new business opportunities will be described by Valdo. Margus Vihman, our Chief Commercial Officer, will discuss wind farms and our harbors, which will give us new opportunities. Ülo Eero, the head of TS Shipping, will discuss wind farms and shipping. Now, the Port of Tallinn. So right now we own 4 harbors. 2 of them are cargo harbors, which is Muuga Harbor and Paldiski South Harbor. In addition, we have 2 passenger harbors. We have the Old City Harbor in Tallinn. This is where we are today, and this is where the Old City Marina is located. And also there is Saaremaa Island Harbor. When it comes to the passenger ports, we also handle cargo, but this is where the ro-ro cargo handling takes place. So as I said, within 30 years, we have gone from land to sea. We have our own fleet and we offer passenger ferry connections between the mainland and the islands in Estonia. I hope you have all used this service as well. As I come from the island of Hiiumaa, I use this service all the time, and I can say based on my own experience that this service is getting better and better. Then in addition to that, we have the icebreaker Botnica, which offers icebreaking services at the north coast of Estonia. And during the summer, Botnica handles offshore projects. Right now, Botnica is near Baffinland Island in Canada, where it works for Baffinland Iron Mines. So it's the icebreaking function and also surveying activities. So we have quite a wide field of activities, but as I said, if we discuss the winds of future, it will be even more extensive. The Port of Tallinn has looking at 4 segments. So we have passengers, cargo, also passenger ferry and other activities, which is mostly ice breaking. And then we have the green marine, which is our joint venture, which helps us with waste management and recycling. So this green view and sustainability have been always very important for us. When it comes to the passenger services, we offer infrastructure and port services for passenger ships and cruise ships. So right now we do not have any cruise boats apart from AIDA, which is here on a permanent basis. But we do have some cruise ships which have visited us during the summer. So when it comes to the cargo, we are offering various port services, handling. We service passengers with cars, and we have our industrial parks, 76 hectares in Muuga, Paldiski 40, and Paldiski has also a good chunk of land, and this is quite a significant benefit for us. When it comes to the cargo harbors, it is very important to have good connectivity. So we have a good rail connectivity. It's close to the capital city. It's close to the airport. Good land transport connections. So this is our strength. When it comes to passenger ferries, we have a 10-year contract with the Estonian government. We have 5 ferries, 4 new, and one of them is a hybrid, which is Tõll. We are operating until 2026, and we are keeping an eye on the future procurements organized by the government, because we want to be competitive in this segment, because the island is still there, the connections are still necessary. So we are seeing quite many opportunities there. When it comes to the icebreaker Botnica, then there is quite a bit of a demand for this vessel. So it is working here in Estonia when we have ice conditions. But this is not really what our cash flow depends on, whether there is ice or not, but ice-breaking service is something which is important. This vessel is a multifunctional vessel and has participated here in servicing wind farms. And this is another thing which might be to our advantage in the future. Now, if you look at the revenues of the Port of Tallinn, then it has been quite balanced between the 4 business segments. Most of their revenue came from the cargo harbor segment. Passenger harbors offered 26, Botnica 9%. What is important to mention here, that as of 2019 or 2020, when we saw the impact of the COVID pandemic, then you can see the figures on the next slide as well. We saw the drop in the passenger figures. Then at the same time, we showed record results in cargo. So last year we had the record of over last 6 years. So this proves that it is a well-balanced business model. So if one segment goes down, then the other segment is supporting this activity. The same is true for ferry and Botnica, which have been quite stable over the last few years. Now, if you look at the adjusted EBITDA, then proportions are more or less the same. There are some areas which are more profitable than the others. I will show this in the slides which are coming up, but we can see the stable revenue coming in. And when the times are hard right now, considering the war between Ukraine and Russia, then it will have its own impact, but this will help us to keep a certain stability. Regarding our share and dividend policies, so as of 2018, we have been listed on the Tallinn Stock Exchange in the Baltic main list. Based on our dividend policy, we have said that starting 2021, we are paying out as dividends at least 70% of the net profit of the previous year. And this is what we have done. This year it was 100% of the previous year's net profit. And then when it comes to the years before that, then as it was agreed during IPO, then we paid out 30 million as a minimum. So, and during the IPO year, it was higher dividend. So there's a disclaimer as well. If the cash flows in the businesses during a certain year might need more capital, and then it does not make sense to pay out dividends, then as an extraordinary measure, we will deviate from this policy. But I wanted to say that our aim is to fulfill these expectations, so we do everything we can. And this is also the expectation of the state, as the state is our main shareholder with 67%. So currently, as of end of June, we have 22,230 plus shareholders. 67% is the state, 33% is trading freely, pension funds, EBRD, US investments funds, and 15 to 20% are small investors. So we have quite an extensive base of investors. Now, if you're looking at the passengers and vessel calls, then we have an overview. So you can see very well how the COVID pandemic had an impact on our number of passengers. So in 2019, it was 10 million. So we were the biggest gate for tourism. We still are currently, but just the number of passengers due to the restrictions have been quite low. But with these results, we can see that the number of passengers is recovering. Compared to the year before, we have seen 3 times the figure over first 6 months of the year. So here we can see a positive development. And what is important on this slide is that if you look at the vessel calls, then if the number of passengers went down and was reduced by half, then the vessel calls actually remained stable. So it was a conscious choice by the state and by the companies as well. To keep the cargo flows going. And this shows how the cargo volume is growing, because most of the benefits or profit comes from vessel calls. So if we still have vessel calls, although the passenger numbers is going down, it's important for the vessels to keep going. Now, if I look at the cargo volume and vessel calls, as I mentioned, we have had the record over the last 6 years in 2021. And right now, the cargo we have handled the most has been the liquid bulk goods. But now, due to the impact of the Russian-Ukrainian war and due to the sanctions, then the liquid bulk and dry bulk has been seriously impacted. When it comes to the ro-ro goods, over the last few quarters, we have seen a 10% growth. So now it has become the biggest group of goods. So you can see the volume over last 6 months compared to the year before. So we have seen the drop of 15%. But at the same time, if you look at all the revenue categories, then it has shown growth, including cargo. So this includes this aspect that the ro-ro goods, when it comes to the revenue, is priced higher, so that therefore, if you look at the revenue, then the drop in liquid bulk does not have such a significant impact in comparison. Now, if you're looking at the passenger traffic volume of the passenger ferries, then over the years it has been fairly stable. During the Corona period, we have seen the passengers and vehicles numbers remain the same, more or less a little bit of a drop of passenger numbers, but it has been more or less stable. So therefore, as I said, it has a stable impact on our revenues. But at the same time, our revenue does not really directly depend on serving passengers and vehicles. Of course, we get the ticket revenue, but we have the contract with the state. So, and this has three components, which is being indexed with fuel and salaries and wages. But our revenue is based on the contract, and the difference we get from the ticket sales revenue and what we should get from the state, it's being then compensated. Now, if we look at the Botnica icebreaker charter, then it has been also stable. Utilization rate has been about 73%. And if you look at the charter days, then it has been over 260. So therefore, the result has been quite good. Now, regarding our position compared to our competition or other Baltic Sea ports in this area, when it comes to the cargo volume, then we are on the 9th position based on the 6-month results. Looking at the total cargo volume compared to the last 6 months, we have not seen much of a change. There's been a slight increase. As you can see on the slide, that most of the growth is in the Russian ports. So the goods which were not able to go to other ports, and we are not receiving Russian vessels right now. So this has gone on to the Russian ports. But at the same time, we have had the same position before. Now, if you look at Riga, then it depends who comes out on top, but we have been holding the same position in this competitive situation. Our advantage is a good infrastructure. If you look at the north-south corridor, our location, and also our harbors, which are relatively new and in good condition. Another aspect we are focusing on is digitalization and good quality service, and I hope that these will help us to survive also when the times are hard. Now, if you're looking at the passenger volume, we are on the 3rd place here. So this is the position we have also held before. Tallinn, Helsinki, Stockholm, of the Baltic Sea harbors, then we are the ones who are offering the most services. There is a lot of traffic between us. If you are looking at the passenger volume, then we can see the triple growth. This has been experienced by us and other ports in the region because the passengers has become more active. Interesting thing about the passengers is that over last few years, if previously many passengers were the ones who came from north to south in order to buy alcohol, for example, and to take it back home, but now we have seen a different trend. The passengers have become younger and they're coming here with their families. So when it comes to the sustainability, this is very important. We do then have younger passengers who value this kind of transport, and they are used to taking ships. And to sum up on the impact of the Russian-Ukrainian war, you can see this information on the slides, but we have seen a direct impact on cargo business. We have seen also restructuring of supply chains. Mostly we have seen the decrease in liquid bulk and fertilizers volume. So this is part of the bulk goods in our harbors, about half of the bulk goods. But at the same time, it has created new opportunities. For example, it expressed in the increase of ro-ro and container volumes. Ro-ro has gone about 10% over 6 months, and containers even more so, about 20%. So there are always opportunities when facing a crisis, and this has been true for us as well. Previously, it has been asked, what has been the financial impact of sanctions? At the beginning of the year, we described different scenarios, and the most negative impact we could see was about 6 to 8 million. And today we can say that this year this has not happened, but everything depends on the extent of sanctions in the future and if there are going to be full embargoes which will be imposed. Right now we can say that the impact has been less than described by our most negative scenario. At the same time, we have seen better recovery in passenger volume than we had predicted. So things have not gone as bad as they could have been. Now, looking at the revenue and profitability across the years, what we can see that 2020, the impact of the COVID pandemic, and this year, over first 6 months, we have seen increase of turnover by 20%. We have seen increase of EBITDA, and we have seen a small increase on EBITDA margin too. Now, if you're looking at the results by segments, then the passenger segment is showing recovery. Prior to the pandemic, 2019, it was the biggest segment when it looks at the revenue and EBITDA. Then it dropped below the cargo, but now you can see that arrow is pointing up again. So it is showing clear signs of recovery. When it comes to the cargo harbors, as I said, when it comes to revenue, the impact is not visible yet. When you're looking at the 6 months, then the revenue is about the same level as the year before. And we have seen the profitability being impacted by energy prices mostly. Now, if you look at Botnica, then this is a stable revenue. In shipping, sometimes the drop is related to bigger repair works. The same is true for passenger ferries as well. We can see a stable revenue, stable EBITDA, stable EBITDA margin. We have planned for bigger repairs for 2021. So after 5 years, this is a regular maintenance work, so nothing unexpected. So EBITDA margin went down a little bit, but both shipping and so passenger ferries and Botnica all together have given us quite stable revenue. But this is it from me. Are there any questions? You can ask questions later as well if you would like to do so. If there are no further questions, then I would like to give the floor to Chairman of the Management Board, Mr. Valdo Kalm, and he'll be discussing new business opportunities. Thank you very much, Andrus, dear shareholders. Welcome to our Traditional Investors Day. You are here in the cruise terminal. I believe it is very important to understand our location currently. But I think for you as shareholders, you are very much interested to know what the future will bring. Future is always more interesting than the past. And now we would like to tell you about the long-term perspective. Because in the business of infrastructure, you need to have a long-term view, about 10 years. But we also want to tell you about our growth projects as much as we can. So we are a stock exchange listed company, therefore we want to be stable in offering dividends, but at the same time, we want to show growth in all our segments. So we want to find the good projects to support our shareholder price. Hopefully, this macroeconomic depression will pass. So we might have a complicated autumn, but we need to face the future. So I would like to start from a little bit further away. I would like to remind you, and of course we all remember it ourselves, that we have a vision as we want to be most innovative. This is not just a slogan, but our innovative approach means that we will have a competitive advantage. You can see that we have quite a big competition with the other big cargo ports, and because of the war, we are really fighting for cargo. We need to be very flexible, very fast, and innovative approach means that our processes are digitalized, and we are very flexible when it comes to pricing as well. So here we have 4 important points in our business strategy. As I said, growth is important. We want to guarantee stable revenue for the owners. Organization culture is important, and also green transition. So we're not only talking about it, but we're doing something about it. When it comes to the green transition, then I would like to tell you about things we have done. I think it is important for you, and we are meeting with our institutional investors. Then they really want to know what we're actually doing when it comes to the green transition. It is not just a slogan, but they want to know what is a sustainable business practice. It has to be transparent and honest, it's obvious, but what it is, what we do for green transition. So we have decided that when it comes to our own electricity, then we have only green power. This is the contract we have signed with energy business. For quite many years, we've offered discount for environmentally friendly vessels. It's a more complicated system, but if you're using shore power and using LNG, then you get a certain discount. So all our shipping companies get discounts on port charges. It's not very big right now, but that means that we are attracting environmentally friendly vessels to our ports, and we're motivating the ship owners to invest into environmentally friendly solutions. What is also unique that we have auto mooring systems, and this is the only one in Europe. In 3 berths, we have robots available. So this is the robot hand or robot arm which receives. So Tallink, Eckerö Line, Viking Line, they are all using them on a daily basis. So this is a profitable project, and that means we will reduce our costs at the same time, but there is also less energy or power used by the vessel and less smoke. Then we have shore power for 5 berths here in the old city harbor. So if you are staying here longer than a certain time period, then you switch off your diesel. There is less smoke, less emissions using the shore power, and we're selling them electricity. And currently, a complicated task is how to make sure how exactly we can offer shore power to the cruise vessels, because one vessel uses up about 10 megawatts, and this is a very big volume, and we just do not have this capacity available. So we are considering what kind of technology we can use, and the EU requirements will come into force as well, that we have to provide shore power. We want to turn this into business. Of course, we're selling this power to them. There are other solutions as well. I'm not going to get into detail. Of course, it makes sense that we are receiving wastewater, for example, and there are many other activities as well. Now, regarding the future, this is what is actually going to be interesting. So if we talk about the mega trends, because before you plan your business, you have to understand what are the mega trends today and what's going to happen in the future. So we will look 10 years into the future right now. We held a mini conference talking about the Port of Tallinn 3.0. Actually, it was 4.0. We were thinking about 6.0 because when it comes to the infrastructure business, you really have to look further. And because of the crises, we have seen that there's been a change in the supply chains. And this is something that we need to understand. And we can see that a lot of production is coming back. This is an ongoing process. This is something we need to understand because producers need to be attracted back to our industrial parks. We are also working on consolidation because we see that the bigger shipping lines are buying up smaller ones. I don't know if it's good or bad. I'm not sure that when it comes to the big groups will bring the happiness to our door. Would it be Microsoft or some other fields that there is a lot of consolidation, but we can see that it's really happening in shipping. We just have to take this into account. Then if you're looking at the sustainable solutions, it is something which is happening. Every day we are talking about alternative fuels. We are talking about power supply more than ever before. And we are moving in this direction ourselves. We turned one of our ferries into a hybrid ferry. 10 years from now, we will see a lot of fuels using alternative fuel, probably mostly hybrid. We do not know today what is going to be this mainstream fuel, but we will find out. But us as ship owners and the port owners, we have to understand that when it comes to the green port, it's part of the ecosystem in the future. One thing we're going to discuss today is that we are part of the alternative fuel production. We have the wind farm projects, and we can see a very big business opportunity there, and it's going to be part of the future. Digitalization and automation. This is part of the mainstream today. In the future, 10 years from now, we are talking about automated vessels. Today, we have a private client in Norway, and they have already ordered 2 automated vessels. They're testing them out in many countries. Today, this testing is ongoing, and the port has to be prepared. So this is not a rocket science, because if you talk about automated ships, this will come before automated cars or public transport. So this is future coming up. We see also more automated terminals, and multimodality means that you need to enable the use of different types of transportation in an integrated way. Muuga is a very good example of a great connection on berth. There is a good connection to rail because Rail Baltic is actually going to start from there. We have built out a Vow junction, so that means we have a very good connection to the roads and the airport. The location is excellent for multimodality center. Digitalization means that the port is doing its own thinking. That is the intelligent or smart port. We can also say that the growing expectations of clients, employees, and stakeholders. This is also clear today because the client wants to have a better quality, employees want to have a better environment. This is a trend we need to continue with. We are trying to model the Port of Tallinn 10 years from now, and we believe that we are using marine single window. We are actually currently using it already because passenger and cargo vessels are doing the declarations digitally. For us as a port and through X-Road, we have a connection to the customs, to the environmental board. So there is no agent which has to run back and forth with paperwork. It's fully digitalized. In Germany, I think it's about 30%, which is already a small miracle that something like this is already working here. We are discussing this with the state today that we need to upgrade the system, and the system has to be moved on to the next level, so it'll be even more convenient. And the ship owners do like it because it's just efficient, it's paperless. The same is also true for automated management of port infrastructure, and we have installed this system in 2017 to the Old City Harbour, but now the same smart solution is used at Muuga and Paldiski. But when it comes to the truck system, we want to create this kind of port partner platform where we have information about cargo. So therefore you can make better proposals for the cargo owners, and you know exactly at any point of time where a specific container is located. So we want to create this kind of port partner platform in the nearest future. So this takes time because this is not that simple. Our clients and partners will need to reorganize their processes, and it's tends to be rather conservative business. Warehouse owners are very conservative, but we can be one of the leaders in this. We want to reduce our manual labor because there is still quite a lot. We want to have automated mooring, for example. Before that, you had people doing it. Now it's only automation. Right now, we are modeling this kind of port infrastructure management program. So Pollard will tell us when it needs to be painted and maintained, not that two guys with a ladder will go and look at it. Because thing with the infrastructure is that you need to maintain it all the time. Then it will last and it's of high quality. Right now, we are already establishing our port digital twin because digitally we have created a 3D model of our infrastructure, and in the future I think it's going to be a daily practice when it comes to maintenance activities as well. Alternative energy sources, this is something I've already mentioned, and I think that by 2030 we will be climate neutral. That is Port of Tallinn, but whether it comes to all our operators, then we cannot really promise that because we can't force them. We have a liberated energy market, but this is how it is. And then value proposition and overview of the total situation. Now, very quickly, let's look at the cargo business as well. We are talking about the multimodal port, and this is where you combine different types of transport because the owner of the cargo is not really interested in how the cargo is moving because they're interested in two things, price and time. Because if you're looking at making a phone call because you don't really know if your call is going to move through air transmission or through a cable. You're not interested in that. You want to know what your package price is. The same is true for cargo. And we need to develop our business so it will provide a different speed and flexibility for cargo. We have been developing our north-south corridor for many years. Now, after the Russian aggression and the war in Ukraine, then fortunately we have quite well been preparing ourselves to provide services to Scandinavian countries. This is an interesting corridor. So Rail Baltic is a very strategic project for us. 2030, everything should be already in place. We will discuss wind farms later. Now, if you look at the alternative fuels terminals, because some of the transit will disappear due to the sanctions in Russia, then this is going to be a more important thing, but we're going to have a huge paradigm shift for the entire generation. So we're recommending to our operators to find new solutions, and the faster it's possible to do, then better it is, because right now we are trying to find out what can replace liquid fuel. For example, liquefied gas is a possibility. We're going to discuss LNG projects as well in a moment, which is in Paldiski. So we're going to have new types of cargo, and this is related to alternative energy sources. We are planning to have in place automated mooring and OPS on regular lines. This is Paldiski and Muuga. because we have done it already for Old City. But for cargo, we should make sure that we have automated mooring. As we said before, because this kind of near-shoring process means that we need to look at the new cargo corridors after the war ends. We would like to have a lot of producers in our industrial parks. We are working for that already, but we would like to see generator producers for wind farms. So it's not easy to get them here, but I think that in 10 years from now, we will have the wind turbine factory here. When it comes to the passenger terminal, we are quite unique that between Tallinn and Helsinki, we could have a green corridor where we have ships or using alternative fuels, the cruise terminal here, and other terminals will use seawater for cooling. This is a unique building. We are using heat pumps for cooling and heating. When it comes to the city space or the client or the passenger journey should be green 10 years from now. This is what we're working for. Alternative fuel sources. And when the vessels are here, they're using shore power and sustainable electricity, renewable electricity, so they're not polluting Tallinn or Helsinki. We will be developing an intelligent, ticketless border crossing process. Then we have another slide about the new urban spaces, because here we have two goals. We want to offer our guests a new environment. Of course, we're going to discuss the real estate business as well, but we want to create this kind of new urban space, which is following sustainable principles. This is where we use renewable energy sources, smart buildings, circular economy, where we are lagging behind. It's really embarrassing that we are so behind. Why is it embarrassing? Is that Green Marine is our environmental company, so we are working quite hard to make sure that the vessels are waste goes into the circular economy. So, but if the legislation is not in place, then this is very difficult. And 10 years from now, we need to have a completely different level. And we want to make sure that we have this planning 15-minute city, so everything is accessible within 15 minutes. New tram line is important, and less cars, more possibility for using alternative methods of transport. So shipping, we see many opportunities. It's a very good business. For when you look at the wind farms, we are refitting our vessels. It depends if we're going to win the next procurement as well. We have the current contract until 2026. We do not know yet the conditions for the new procurement, but it should be definitely in support of refitting the vessels as hybrids. We have already done one vessels, and we're thinking about hydrogen vessels as well. For Saaremaa to use electricity alone is quite easy because it's only half an hour trip, but Hiiumaa is a little bit too far for electricity. So batteries will need to be too big. But for hydrogen, it is possible, so we keep working and we'll see what happens. We are also thinking about unmanned vehicles, also the ticketless service. This has to be supported by our digital strategy. So this is supported by 3 wells because we have our digital port strategy, a smart supply chain, digital management of ports, and central functions. So here we have a whole host of acronyms as well, which look impressive. but this is not a rocket science either. This is a system which is being used by other companies as well. So, but we need to have a systemic approach supported by process management and technology. We have quite a sizable IT department already. We used to have no department. It was quite a surprise. But today we have 20 people. We have a lot of big data, and data we do not really know how to use yet. So that means that all the businesses are becoming digitalized. There is no alternative. In order to achieve that, you have to have a long-term view, and some of the things need to be negotiated with your clients because you cannot really digitalize things by yourself, and there is no process management before that because you have to really think things through carefully. Now, looking at the growth projects very quickly. So as it was promised, we need to have a long-term view, but at the same time, we have to have some short-term clarity as well. So today we will need to focus on offshore wind farms, their construction and maintenance. I'm not going to get into details here. We have a separate presentation for that as decisions have been made. Rail Baltic is a future project as well. So this promotes ro-ro and container business, which is another growth field for us. So if some of the liquid cargo will disappear, you have to find new growth areas. This year we have done really well. So we have been supported by ro-ro and containers, and it has replaced liquid fuel. We see possibilities here when it comes to alternative fuels. Also warehousing services. The next important thing is the real estate development. So there's one slide about offshore wind farm. This is quite an impressive investment. We have EU funding available for this project because some of the services we provide are offered to NATO or the military. So that means that the berth and the backyard here has multiple functions because we have several clients supporting us on the land side. We have the draft project, draft design, and it should be done by 2025. So this is quite an extensive project, but our Chief Commercial Officer will describe this value proposition in greater detail. I would like to say that we have been fans of Rail Baltic from the beginning. Some of the people did not quite believe in it, but it's very important for us because the freight station or the cargo station will be in Muuga. So Rail Baltic actually starts from Muuga. It allows good multimodality in our approach. We believe that once it gets going, it will add annual capacity of 4 to 5 million tons of cargo. It's Finland and Sweden. They import and export because we want to be a good hub for Scandinavian countries, and the preconditions here are already in place. Vuosaari port is across from Muuga. We have a lot of cooperation with the Helsinki Port Group, who owns Vuosaari. We would like to see more cooperation in Sweden as well. A design was completed this year, and construction of the first stage will start next year. Nobody knows when Rail Baltic will be completed, therefore we do not have the end date because it depends on many things. It is a very complicated project, but for us, Rail Baltic is not only access to Central Europe, but you can clearly see that it provides us access to the Mediterranean Sea all the way to the south. A decision already has been made to connect to 14 to 35 millimeters through Ukraine. Yesterday, we had the transport commissioner here at Muuga, and I asked Mrs. Taufman that yes, indeed, decision has been made. So connections will be made to Ukraine, Moldova and Kazakhstan. So this is bypassing Russia. And I believe that Rail Baltic will create new opportunities for us. And this is not only Central European cargo business. This year, we already saw that the ro-ro and container business went up. And due to the crisis, our ports have been discovered by different cargo owners. We have the operator there, so we don't really know where it comes from. So Stevedore is moving the cargo. So we have a container terminal owner here. So they have their own cranes, so all the capacity is in place. So we see this as a growth business. In the future, there will be possibility to be involved more in fuel business. First LNG terminal is in Paldiski-Pakri Peninsula. We are not the builders of that berth, but we have made a proposal for the port services. What is interesting there is that the berth which is being built right now, there is going to be a big terminal. But once this terminal is going to move to land, this is quite interesting for us because then it's going to be operating as a regular terminal. The volume goes up, there are a lot of vessels, and we see very fast development there. So we believe that Paldiski is going to be one of the future alternative fuel terminals. You can produce hydrogen, you can get green energy from wind turbines as well. So you can produce green hydrogen. Hydrogen can be liquefied and transported the same way as you can do with crude oil and oil. So there are many possibilities there. We are also cooperating with different ports. There is a green fuel corridor. This is for the vessels where they can get other alternative fuels for bunkering. So this could go Tallinn, Gdynia, Hamburg, Rønne, Rotterdam, Tallinn. So this is the route. We can see growth opportunities here. We are one of the founding members of the Hydrogen Valley, Estonia. So this is hydrogen for our own use, and I already mentioned that perhaps we will refit some of the ferries to hydrogen power. Maybe also there could be shore power for cruise vessels from hydrogen, and there could be a separate terminal business as well. So this is not for tomorrow yet, but this is the plan for next 5 years, and I believe there'll be new opportunities. One more thing, we have managed to get quite far with the detailed planning permission in the city of Tallinn. So this entire area of 60 hectares is covered by this planning permission. But what is important here is what we do not use for our own core business. So that means we would like to develop some real estate there. We would need to see that this planning permission will be approved. So the business model here is that we are the owners of this land. We rent it for a long term, so we have the building permissions in place. So if there is going to be an interesting project, then we have agreed with the supervisory board that we can also enter that project. For example, if we would really like to see a specific hotel by the sea, a certain brand under certain conditions, so we can move into real estate business as well. It is not our core business. We don't have these competencies, but there are great opportunities here because we're talking about 400,000 square meters, so the volume is quite impressive. With this city, in principle, we have made the agreements when it comes to mobility and the plots. So it could be that this year the detailed draft planning permission will be published. So once that is done, then there is a chance for the planning permission to be approved. But it takes time because the city has quite a big administrative system, and there are many other questions as well. The tram line, for example, we've been waiting for. The decision has been made. We need green buses, we need bike lanes. So there are many other things as well. But in principle, all these things have been discussed. And I hope that we can start with the real estate development in this and here. So this is quite extensive, and we're actually going out to the sea as well. But in real estate business, it depends on what the rest of the economy does, because you should not put all that volume onto the market, even if the planning permissions were in place. But I think that in the future, you as the owners, it's good information for you to have. It's a long-term but a secure business. And we're not very concerned because we are near the sea, we are near the city, we are near the water. So I think we think it's a very valuable development we are looking at. So it's a good and long-term perspective we have here. So this is it from me. And as I promised, we will focus more on one of the projects of our 4 projects. But questions? The answer. Yes, indeed, it might have a positive impact and it might have a negative aspect as well. Perhaps you have heard of Fit for 55, a green transition program. I think there'll be more positive rather than negative impact. I already mentioned that we have received EU funding, and in cooperation with Port of Helsinki, we have the 4th twin port project going, where we have received EU funding already. So that means we have a good standing. And so far, we have managed to get funding for our applications because we get things done and it's a good reputation to have. We are discussing project number 5 with Port of Helsinki currently. So when you look at the strategic view, then we are part of the European transportation network, so therefore I believe it's positive. When it comes to Fit for 55, then it involves certain risks, but these risks are more for the shipping companies rather than us. When it comes to the green transition, maybe it's more sensible post-war. It has not disappeared, but I think there is going to have a more practical approach. I believe there are more risks for ship owners than the ports. Any other questions? Any comments? So I gave you a very quick overview. I only talked about the projects we have, and I did not really give you many figures. Any questions, any comments? If there are no further comments, then I would like to give the floor to Margus, and Andrus and I can answer the questions later. Thank you very much. Good evening. I have the task to discuss the offshore wind farm base at Paldiski. First, I'll start with where this idea come from. 5 years ago, we started to look at the wind farms in the Baltic Sea. So this is the map with the latest updates where we looked at all the wind farms, and the investment will be about 100 billion euros. So the market is there. Of course, nobody knows when they're going to be constructed. I can tell you a story about it. We had an agreement with the Director of Development from Nelia Energia Power Company, and we had an agreement that they will tell us when they're going to construct. They came for coffee every 6 months for about 4 years and promised that they're going to build and they're going to build. But now, 6 years later, this wind farm at Hiiumaa has not been built. Now, this shows you also where the ports are, where the infrastructure is for building wind farms. The closest is on Bornholm Island in Danish waters. In our own regions, there are no suitable construction ports. You can build wind farms in many ways, but over 90% have been built with the jack-up vessel. So the vessel is the type which comes to the shore, takes the components, the towers, the gondolas, the engines, the blades, and takes them to the installation site, sets them down, comes and picks up a new load. So the charter price is about 450 to 500,000 euros. So if you take 2.5 days to go to Gulf of Riga, then it becomes very expensive. It is cheaper to do it somewhere nearby. So we thought that Paldiski will be the best location. We have a 14.5 meter depth, which is suitable for this this kind of depth, and we have 119 hectares of land, so this will be a suitable place. So what we're planning? We are planning a port for wind farm construction. So 15 meters depth, 300 meters long, even a little bit longer than you need for a jack-up vessel, but this is for the military vessels as well. Then in addition to that, it has a lot of land side, because the blade length is about 115 meters. It's going to be even longer. Over next 5 years, the blade length could be about 150 meters. So the minimum is 5 hectares for the builder. We have allocated about 10 hectares. We have about 40 hectares land, which is not directly behind the quay, but it has very good access through public roads or port internal road network. So production, warehousing, everything is possible in that area. So here you can see 2 areas. For the 16 hectares, we have detailed planning permission in place. For 23 hectares, it is not yet in place because we didn't want to have a general planning permission, but rather we wait for the tenant and provide the planning permission for them. In Paldiski, fortunately, this process is a lot faster and closer faster even in the municipalities close to Tallinn. So you might say that yes, indeed, the other such ports exist where there's a suitable draught and land. But if you look at other ports, then yes, indeed, in Sillamäe, you can see that there is enough production area, enough draught. But in order for the wind farm business to work, you need to get rid of the rest of the cargo. Then we looked at what the Latvians, Lithuanians, and Finns do. In Finland and Sweden, it is very complicated because all the ports are full. We do not see any separate building taking place. Port of Riga is not suitable. It's a river port. It's very hard to navigate and it freezes over. Next, Ventspils, it is possible, but they do not have a suitable quay, because then they would need to start investing into that. Our investment is 53 million and 20 million will be funded. This is an advantage because they would need to actually invest 53 million. About 3 weeks ago, we visited Klaipėda with Valdo. The plan is in place to build this kind of a quay, a little bit smaller though, but if you know Klaipėda, then it's at the end of the bay, very much deep in that. There is a small gap, there's a small opening, and they have planned their quay at the very far end in this bay. So every time then this jack-up vessel comes out, they have to make sure that there is no traffic. So when they're going to build in Palanga nearby, this is going to be the first wind farm for the Lithuanians. Possibly it's going to be doing everything in Lithuania, but they cannot really compete for other wind farms further away because the entrance and exit is quite complicated for that port. What else we have in Paldiski? We have 3 quays where we can offer ro-ro and lo-lo. So that means that not all the components will be provided by jack-up vessel, but you can use a regular installation vessel. We have Botnica, which allows a survey and installation. We have a stevedoring company, Esteve, And one of the competences is that they handle very large cargo and very heavy cargo. They have brought in most of the on-land wind farm equipment. They have offered gas equipment. From North America and from Europe, they transport large-scale mining equipment. So they take them apart, they put them on wagons, railroad cars, and send them to Central Asia. So they have this suitable competence. Then we have very good ro-ro lines, because if the wind farm builder does not want to build everything in with a cargo vessel but wants to use ro-ro, then we have regular weekly lines to most large Central and Western European ports. We have a duty-free zone. Baltic has a quite a good railroad construction infrastructure, because you can have 3 trains per 24 hours. It's possible loading to and from railway. Good road connection, because the Circle Road reaches Scaleway. The airport is not far if you need to bring an expert in, and all the pilot and tug services and all the other port services are available. If you're familiar with Baltic, then Baltic has a lot of very active businesses, and there is a club or an organization called the Baltic Association of Entrepreneurs. So they have stated themselves a goal over next 10 years to bring investments for 1 billion. As we see that there's a new port being built, we are making investments, so it's not that unlikely. But we, together with them, we have looked at the possible additional services we can offer to this company, which is going to build the wind farm. An example, NFE Green, a couple of years ago, looking at the Gulf of Riga wind farm project, they planned about 2 billion for the investment. Today, this is going to be a lot more. So if you sell 1% of some of products from Estonia, then this is 20 million, or 5% is 100 million. We've discussed this with the ministry as well. So if there's going to be planning permissions approved, then the rule should say that about 20% should be local content. So we have looked at what is available in Baltic, because there could be concrete, metalworks. Keila has ABB company for electricity, could be diving services, maintenance for large-scale equipment. We have also looked at the ship repair maintenance in partnership with BLRT, and in cooperation with the Estonian Maritime Academy, we've looked at the training possibilities. Because another thing which will be beneficial for all of Estonia is that if we will have these experts who can do this work, or we have companies which are being used for outsourcing. We have talked with many big producers. There are 3 of them in the world, and they thought that this market is going to grow 20 times over a 5-year period before the war. But if we get the first wind farm in the Baltic countries, we have the know-how, we can consult the others, we can sell the services to the others, but we can do that for the entire world. We can offer our certified services for the entire world and Asia and places. Another thing which is interesting, if we have more wind farms, then the electricity price will go down, and we can start producing hydrogen, because 60% of hydrogen, we know that 30% is going to be a loss in storage. But if the electricity is cheap, then this could be a completely new branch of export, because you can sell hydrogen everywhere in Europe, and we will have this network of terminals and vessels who will be transporting hydrogen. So this is not only the port or the engineering business, but this could be quite an extensive national ambition. And now I would like to give the floor to Ülo Eero, who is going to talk a little bit about shipping. Are there any questions? If there are no questions, then Ülo Eero will take the floor. So is everything very clear or nothing is clear? My name is Ülo Eero. I'm the head of TS Shipping. I'm representing TS Laevad and TS Shipping today. So I'm going to describe our business plan, which started about in May, when I managed to get the Prime Minister to visit Botnica, also some Secretaries General, also other ministers. So therefore, we could start thinking about the wind farms because we have the suitable competence. TS Shipping and TS Laevad got together and looked at what they can offer into this joint project in the future business. We understood that TS Shipping has positioned itself very well in this offshore landscape. So we know very well what is a wind farm. We are familiar with oil and gas industry. We have this quite complicated know-how, which is usually quite complicated for Estonians. We already have that. For TS Laevad, we have a good shipbuilding experience. So if we talk about our business project, we need to talk about shipbuilding and also possibilities of using these vessels in different ports in order to provide maintenance for wind farms. In TS Shipping, we started in 2013 when we signed a contract with the German company Siemens and the Dutch company NDA. We worked in wind farms which are north of the German coast. For this entire summer, we only had positive feedback from Siemens and from NDA. We established a system of feedback that every client we have been working with will sign their own client satisfaction report. So the feedback we got from the first wind farm experience was 10 out of 10 in all the aspects. So it was a very good start and it was a very good CV as we were entering the business. So why us and why Port of Tallinn? And how we are positioning ourselves. The two ports, Paldiski and Saaremaa harbors, based on the location, are in a really good place where you will be thinking about which vessels to use and which wind farms you can cover with our services. And as it is today, we have made a clear difference that Paldiski, as quite a large harbor, could be our base, and Saaremaa could be the maintenance harbor. And the difference is that in the base port, we are offering the assembly setup. It will be good to get a producer to join who will build or provide construction right there. And Saaremaa, it means that we do not have a long distance to travel to go to the wind farms which are west of Saaremaa and also to Gulf of Riga. I'm not talking about smaller vessels, but I'm talking about larger vessels which will position themselves within wind farms. Right now, we are working on this business plan. Are we offering services to 1, 2, 3, or 5 wind farms? Right now, this is still unclear. We already heard that 3 preliminary contracts have been signed, so there is enough work. If we were to cover all of the market alone with our wind farm services, then it would be on the TS Shipping, on the TS Laevad, then it will take about 500 people. So it shows how many jobs we can create. But right now, our business plan is focusing on 1 wind farm. If we can come into agreement with 2 developers, then we just double it. And if it's 3, then it's threefold and so forth. But when it comes to this entire business plan, then we need to move quite quickly. As Margus showed, then the closest base ports will be near Bornholm, and it's even more difficult with this kind of vessels which can function within wind farms. When it comes to jack-up vessels, then we're not going to build those or not even buy them because their price tends to be about €500 million. So that would be too much of an investment. Maybe we'll do that in a distant future, but we'll focus on two types of vessels. So these are the vessels which would allow us to work in the third and fourth sector, starting from my left, then is the sea bottom ornithological survey. Then you have monopiles placed at the bottom of the sea where the towers will be attached and the gondolas and blades attached on top. And on the right-hand side, you can see that this is the most attractive sector for us because this covers the entire maintenance of wind farms. Depending on the life cycle, that could be about 30 to 35 years. So if we're preparing this business plan today, then we can see that this would be at least 30 years long. And then, therefore, we're making plans for our vessels which could work in the wind farm. Right now, when it comes to shipbuilding, then there are not so many issues because we know that shipbuilders are happy to accept our offers, but there's a problem with crews because we have a limited number of seamen who know anything about this kind of business because these experts are already engaged in other countries, so we need to work a lot. Since the shipbuilding will only start in 2023, then presumably we have a little bit of time that we can put the crews together who will be then running these difficult ships. A little bit about the port as well. Then the Paldiski on the left here. So this is not Paldiski yet, but you can get an understanding of the base port. So that means it has to be a special area where the regular port rules do not apply, but you have to have a much higher level security. It has to be dust-free. So there are many requirements here. So I hope that the key 6A in Paldiski will meet with the requirements in order to receive jack-up vessels. This is what you can see on the left. One tower is about 1,000 tons. So if they load 6, 8 or 10 towers, you can see that this jack-up has to be very firm with these 4 support pillars, and the loading process has to be very fast. As Margus said, the day cost about 450 to 500,000. So this is a very complicated process to load and the blades, and to make sure this vessel would not capsize, would not list, or would not be unseaworthy. So this is complicated, but it's doable, and there are many examples in the rest of Europe. So on the right, you can see Eemshaven Port, and there is about 1/3 of the territory which is not in the picture, and this is a military zone next to it. But we have the examples, so we know what we want to do and we know what it should look like when we're looking at the base port. The next one is the maintenance port. So this could be a Saaremaa. In our business plan, we do not exclude that one port will not be enough. Maybe it will be good to have 2 ports, but a maintenance harbor is the place where you have the maintenance engineers based, about 150 wind turbines. We need about 100 people who need to maintain everything, plus ship's crew, warehousing, logistics. So there are many professions. Also people on the shore who will be employed. So this is very interesting topic for the local governments of Saaremaa Island. They are asking a lot of questions and want to find out how exactly it's all going to work. So this is a very interesting topic, and we'll see what's going to happen. Are we going to continue with 4 vessels or more? So this depends on our procurements, where we can participate and which procurements we will win and how many vessels we will have in the future. But right now we talk about 1 or 2 bigger vessels plus 4 smaller vessels which can then travel between the wind turbines. The rule of thumb is that with the smaller vessels you travel about 40 kilometers, and everything longer than that, it's not really feasible to use smaller vessels, but then you need to use SOV vessels, which are a little bit larger, and I will show you these vessels in a moment. Now we're going to discuss 3 types of vessels. We have CTV vessels, which are small aluminium casing vessels. They are not made with metal casing because the speed would suffer. Usually 30 to 35 knots speed, and you need quite many of those because the rule of thumb of wind parks says that you cannot service more than 4 wind turbines per day per vessel. So if you have 2 or 3 developers, you need a lot of vessels. They can host about 12 engineers, 3 to 5 tons of equipment would be electronics or tools. Then there are SOV vessels. These are the most important ones for us because right now we're traveling across Europe, and ship companies and designers, in order to understand very clearly which are the SOV vessels which will be suitable for us because our conditions are somewhat particular. And these are SOV vessels, and they house a helideck, which you can see on the red vessel. They have heat compensated crane system, and this also functions when there is waters are quite choppy because it keeps it the steady system, and it has also smaller vessels which can go between different wind turbines. This vessel is capable of holding its position when the seas are rough, and that means next to the wind turbine. As you can see, we're using our own winch system to remain next to the wind turbine, and it has to be less than a half a meter movement. So it's a very complicated task, but we have been doing this with Botnica for about 10 years already. We also have to understand that in our waters in the Baltic Sea, we do have ice conditions. Yesterday, I got an old book from 1937 which said that, oh, well, we're not going to have so much ice anymore, so icebreakers are not necessary anymore. Why do we need icebreakers? We can sell them. And I have heard it at least 4 times. It's being said we don't need icebreakers anymore, we can sell them. But unfortunately, it's not true because every 7 or 8 years you have ice conditions. And we had a really rough winter, but there was 2010, 2011. So that means that we are planning to use hovercrafts, which are not too expensive, about 120, 150,000 euros. But that means that you can go from one turbine to another, also across ice, taking up to 3 tons of cargo plus engineers. So when it comes to the wind farms, you can only work there during the day. So I can't quite imagine during the winter when your daytime is only 2 hours, how you can get to the turbines and back within daylight hours with these vessels. So we'll see how it's going to work. As I said, we have been through all the well-known shipbuilders in Europe. We have had personal meetings. They have held presentations. We have told them what we want to get. So this is what we've had to describe in great detail. And the biggest issue is fuel. As of today, we do not really know. Is it going to be electricity, methanol, hydrogen? What is the fuel? Even today, we do not really know yet. But we have 2 meetings coming up. with 2 ship designers. So based on forecasting and calculations, we have to be able to predict at least 10 or 15 years what is the fuel and how to use it. Because when it comes to wind turbines, we can use it for production of hydrogen, which will be a good option. So being next to the wind turbine, we can get power and electricity as well. The Dutch, for example, are planning to use a plug-in system for the wind turbine, so a vessel can come next to the wind turbine and plug in for electricity. So there are many options. So where exactly we're going to go, we will see over the next few months. But it's quite urgent because the vessels do not exist yet. So we have been looking at the market about 2 years now. So if 5 Estonian developers are all going to build at the same time, then I don't even know where you get the jackups or the vessels or the maintenance or service people. So we try to be at the front of this queue and to say that we have vessels, we have ports, we have qualified staff, so we can come and help you right away. So this should be one of the main arguments. Also the local content, which I've also stressed that all the foreign builders should at least use 20% of the local content. Would it be the shore staff, would it be vessels or anything else? So that should be important, that it also provides interest for our state. Another important topic which is a must everywhere else, is that you need all sorts of aircrafts that you can access the wind farms. We have had helicopters on Botnik as well. We've been using drones for both for people and for cargo. This has been part of our business plan. So we will see what kind of aircrafts are can use, so it can be attractive for the developers, so that it'll be possible for us to win the procurement. So here we have the pictures of the CTV type vessels. So there are different types, but the problem is that in general, they have a small drawth. So if you have a wave over 2 meters, then they cannot go out to sea. So we need to have a helicopter, or we have to have SOV vessels, which will do the work, because it's very expensive to keep the wind turbine not working. So it's better to take the SOV vessels, even on charter, to cover the service need. The biggest competitive advantage for us is our willingness to build the ice class SOV vessels in the world. There are no SOV vessels with the ice class, so we'll be first. So therefore, we have been creating a lot of fuss in Finland, in Sweden, and Norway. That there are some Estonians who are coming there and saying that every now and then things will freeze over, and the developers are a bit shocked, but they don't really know how ice is going to impact everything. Left, you can see 2011 ice conditions, because you can't take a CTV vessel, because if the CTV vessel gets stuck in ice, it will not move. SOV vessels should be an ice class vessels. We have been talking with Aker Arctic from Finland. They are quite well known across the world for building ice class vessels, but today they do not really know what kind of ice conditions we should be prepared for. But if we want to suggest to the developers that we can work throughout the year, not only 8 months, then we have to have ice class vessels. And once you have ice class, that means that's a heavier vessel. You have a deeper vessels, which are the ports you can get into, and these are the questions we need to have answered. Here is a good picture of the Finnish Metrological Institute. So you can see that people keep saying that there is not that much ice, but you can see ice is there. So we have newspaper clippings from us, from Latvia, where people are saying that we don't need icebreakers anymore, and then a little bit later say, oh, it's so nice to have icebreakers, they brought 10 vessels in. Well, there's of course climate warming, and we are working in the Arctic conditions with Botnica right now. We can see how the climate warming has an impact, but no state institution has been able to give me a guarantee that we are never going to have ice again in our waters. So it's an issue, but I think it's a positive as well, that my recommendation for developers has been you should include ice class vessels in your procurement. So that was a quick overview. Questions? Tõnupi Helgas. So if you are planning to pay 70% of your net profit as dividends every year, so where do you get the money for investment in order to implement all your great plans? I can say that we have a lot of investors who are willing to invest. Thank you, a very good question. So we wanted to show you these opportunities, but the growth opportunities need to be financed, and then there is a possibility to pay out the dividends. As Ülo said, indeed, we do not have a problem with financing. Banks are very willing, so it's a stable company, and when it comes to cash flow, then all of these things have been planned. So if we talk about the investment in Paldiski, then it has been planned over a couple of years, so not everything takes place over 1 year. Then when it comes to the wind farm fleet, it is also a multi-annual project. The business plan, it has not been completed yet. So we are not going to even speculate to the extent of this investment, but I can confirm that we are planning these investments so that the dividend payments will not suffer. So this has been our strategy. Of course, we need to invest into growth, but it has to be sensible, and not everything should be done over one single period. So when it comes to the wind farm, then this is a long-term project. So we are not going to build the entire fleet at one go. We are taking it step by step. So indeed, maybe it wasn't clear, but if the business is going well, then we are going to look at our own waters for wind farms, and maybe it's going to be a Finnish or Swedish coast as well. So it might be much bigger. This last presentation was very impressive, and we see quite extensive plans. If I think of the first presentation, then there was a reference to passenger ports, then passenger vessels, and it was about 1/3 for sales revenue and EBITDA. And then there was a presentation about the future, about 2030 and beyond. So what do you think is the picture is going to be in 10 years' time if these projects will be implemented? So what do you think your proportions is going to be? Cargo, passenger vessels, passengers, and everything else. So I understand that the wind farm is going to be part of the fourth segment. Yes, indeed, this is our offshore business, icebreaking, TS Shipping revenue, so this falls under others. So this other in 10 years' time could grow quite significantly. I think that the biggest business we have is our core business, which is cargo and passenger business. But I think these others might grow to be as significant as it is for the passenger ferries right now, for 25%, for example. So yes, indeed, it's a bit early to say, but it can grow to form about a quarter of our future portfolio. Any other questions? Do you know what are the plans of Latvia and Lithuania for their own wind farms? So how many turbines they are planning in comparison to us? So Margus, perhaps you can help me, but in general, we know that the Lithuanian numbers are quite similar to ours right now. It is actually less, about 80 has been planned for Palanga, but they have not even carried out the environmental impact analysis yet. The main problem is the environmental impact, because this gives you an understanding the size of the wind turbine, how many of them you can install, but I believe it's going to be about 80. In Latvia, when it comes to Gulf of Riga, that's also 80 to 100 wind turbines. So these are the figures stated today, but I'm sure that in the future they will have more planning permissions. So a little bit less than we have, because here we are talking about 3 wind farms, so about 300 wind turbines. So there could be more, of course, and the question is also if we want to export a lot, if we have surplus, then this is not something we know yet. Then we have Finnish and Swedish coast, already approved areas. And we roughly know what the volume is going to be there, so we are eyeing this area as well. I have one more question regarding the national fleet, because right now the agreements are made regarding national fleets, which is comprises of bigger vessels which are owned by the government. So how is that going to impact the Port of Tallinn? Right now, when it comes to the plan for the national fleet, it's going to comprise of all the vessels which are being owned by different offices. I think it's right thing to do. There's a good possibility for synergy. But our passenger ferries are not under that system. This is how the situation is right now. Botnica is not under these authorities either. There have been different ideas before, but right now these are the vessels which are owned by the Police and Border Guard Board, some pollution vessels, and it makes sense to make sure that this is one fleet, but our vessels are not under that system. Okay, thank you all. Thank you very much for your interest, and thank you for your excellent questions.